right, we are back. It has been too long, and we are back. Welcome to another episode of the Joe and Doug Show. We're glad that you're with us. We hope that you are enjoying the post-holiday stuff, preparing for the next holiday. And there's snow today here in Youngstown. They canceled the schools because it was supposed to be crazy and everything else. And it really has been like, wah, wah, wah. My kids went out and had a snowball fight in an inch and a half of snow.
Dirt fight.
Yeah, dirt fight. My brother, on the other hand, up in Cleveland, he said he's got a ton of snow. They had a bunch of fun. They went sledding and all sorts of stuff. I think probably one of the good things that came out of it was, the schools have been doing remote learning for certain students. And so today, instead of having a day where it was just off, they had remote learning. So there was a couple hours where they had to jump on and do some Google assignments and stuff like that.
Kids hate that. Hate it.
It's funny if you think about it. I was talking with somebody today and they said, like in 15, 20 years, when these kids have kids, they're going to say to their, the high schoolers are going to say, back in my day, we actually had snow days where we got off from school and you didn't have to do any work. And their kids are going to be like, what? So, no, it's so good. It's good to be back. I am turned a 7-day trip to Florida into a 16-day trip to Florida, courtesy of the Rona. And
you worked that thing in this 2-day trip.
Yeah, my wife and I both had no sense of smell or taste. Had a few days where we were pretty sick, and other than that, we got to enjoy family and be in the sunshine. And and people all have different thoughts and opinions on, well, you couldn't. We all knew that was a possibility. Our family had a conversation about it, and we decided that the risk was worth being around family, and that we felt that for our family and for everybody else, everybody felt like it was worth taking the chance that you might get it. And a couple of our family members tested negative. A couple of our family members had mild symptoms and whatnot. But now I have the antibodies. I feel like Superman. I feel like I can walk into the supermarket, take my mask off, take my shirt off, like whatever. Like
it's getting awkward.
Yeah, it is a little awkward. No, but in all seriousness, you spend, I think most people spend time worried about like contracting and, did I do this? Did I wash my hands enough? Like, you have all that. And then once you get it and get through it, and not that you can't get it again. I know somebody's going to comment or whatever. Well, you can get it again. I'm sure you can. I'm sure it'll mutate. I'm sure there's all those things, but at least in this initial go around, to have the antibodies working on your behalf, even if you do get it a second time, your body's going to have a natural built-in defense for it. So you do feel a little comforted by that. And thank God, obviously some people do have pretty serious responses to the virus. And so thank God it was fairly mild as far as we're concerned. So anyway, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually, I go for these little expeditions to get recharged and stuff like that. This was a different one. This is not a recharging thing at all.
No.
You might have some appreciation for this being as connected with spiritual as you are, but typically I go for quiet, right? Sit on the beach, look at the sun, connect with myself, get into my thoughts and do prayer and all that kind of stuff. This was like an atonement type of deal where I got like bleached in the face with wrongs and things that I'd maybe hurt people and whatever. And I got to relive some really awkward moments.
Okay.
And the suggestions of I've got to go around and make some amends here. And so it was rough. There was a lot of sadness that went along with it. And I wasn't expecting, go on a vacation and
so your goal wasn't to do that, but that's just what showed up when you went into that space.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was like really urging it on because I really needed a recharge. I usually get fired up and get the inspiration kick in, and I got a different dose of stuff I wasn't expecting on this one.
Yeah, no, that's those are special times though. I always find that when we get the thing that we're not necessarily looking for, it's usually the thing that we needed, and so maybe it was the very thing that you need to recharge your battery long term, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like a longer term thing. Now, is there something with the ocean that makes this stuff happen? My wife always says that whenever she's near the ocean, she's closest to God that she ever feels.
Yeah.
And so like when we were in that spot too, you feel diminished, you feel real small in those kind of settings. So I think that was, the stage was set for what happened there. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't expecting it though.
And now, did you go swimming in the water or was it too cold for that?
Too cold.
We went swimming in the water, but we were in the Gulf of Mexico and it was
different.
It was 85 and sunny and, The water was probably in the 70s. It wasn't too bad. The Floridians all thought we were crazy, but we were like, we're from Ohio. It's freezing up there. This is great. We went on a sunset cruise, and we're on the cruise, and they're going through, and they're showing us where all the famous people live and stuff. And they were like, this is Andre Agassi's, 4-story mansion that he built or whatever, the tennis player. I don't know if you're familiar. And he didn't have enough room to build himself a tennis court, so he just built it on the roof. So he has a tennis court on his roof right next to the water.
Beautiful.
It's awesome. We saw Urban Meyer's place that he's been quarantining out. We saw his boat with the, I think it's called the O'Shea or whatever, but it's got the OH for Ohio. They're like, anybody from Ohio? And we were like, my wife and I were like, woo. And then this other family that was on there were all like, hey, we're from Lorraine. Woo, OH. they had a few drinks at that point. Yes. So karaoke got interesting later on the cruise. No, we had a really good time. But yeah, we were the crazy Northerners that were swimming in the Gulf of Mexico when everybody else is like, it's freezing. I'm like, it is beautiful.
That is your perfect temperature.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he scolds me all the time for the heat of my swimming pool. not a refreshing deal.
The pool was a different story. The pool was kind of like bath water. So they keep their pools really warm. I'm like, why do you do that? I was like, I don't know. But the house we stayed at was great. It was a really, really good, refreshing time. And there is something about the ocean that kind of brings you to that place of peace and maybe charges you up on certain things. And it does make you feel kind of small. Yeah. When you step into something so massive, you realize, we've only explored, tiny percent of it. One of the cool things I got to do while I was there. So my brother-in-law, Andy, loves Tesla, Elon Musk, the whole deal. So you guys have a little connection there. He was like, well, there's a launch tonight. And I was like, really? And he's like, and it's happening not too far from where we're at. He goes, we might be able to see the rocket outside. And I was like, cool. Not thinking anything about it, but I'm like, Joe's probably watching. So we sat down and the kids were watching a cartoon and I was like, Andy, isn't that rocket launch on? He goes, yeah. And so we put it on. The kids all counted down and stuff. And they were like, what are we doing? We're like, we're going to go outside and we're going to see the rocket. The kids were enamored. We all run outside and then we're like, is that it? We're looking at the little lights and then all of a sudden we see this orange like go. Oh, yeah. And we were like, that's the rocket. I took a video and sent it to you. Part of me is like, man, if I would have known it was that close, maybe we would have drive and, watched it up close and personal. I didn't realize it was, that close, but, really, really just kind of cool experience, all the way around. And obviously the astronauts got to where they needed to go. And, Elon had his, another successful launch and return and all that stuff. You watched it obviously, and I figured you would.
There was cool. The second part of that is after the first stage burns off, they land it somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Right. So last year around this time, we went on a Disney cruise, and we were in the middle of the ocean when this thing actually landed wherever we were by the Bahamas. So we got to see the launch and we got to see the return. So. Yeah,
that's cool. We tried to watch for the return, but we couldn't make it out.
Yeah, way out
too far away.
Yeah, way out to the east.
So, but that was a neat experience. I'd never had that before. Kids had a ton of fun. We got to see a real live manatee. In real life, we'd never seen that before. We were just looking at shells on the shore, and then all of a sudden this thing came up, and it was huge. I don't know, 20 feet off the shore. We were like, whoa. And my wife's like, I think that's a manatee. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law took their kids mini golfing to a place that you could feed alligators. And that was kind of an experience for them. They basically did these long sticks, fishing poles or whatever, and they tie pieces of chicken to it and you throw it and the gators chomp them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of an experience. Did you see that video of the guy from Florida that his little dog got taken by an alligator and the dude jumped in the lake, wrestled the alligator, ripped its mouth open, pulled his dog out, and didn't lose his cigar the entire time? I was very impressed by that video. So let's talk about, since you brought up your redemption, atonement, it's kind of a down to come off when we both came off of a little bit of vacations, but walk through that process a little bit, because we often talk about inspiration, the high stuff, but I find that so much of the valuable stuff happens underneath. It's kind of like an iceberg. Like people see 10%, but 90% of the work's done underneath the surface, whether that's with atonement, forgiveness, so many of those other things. So you kind of went and you were trying to explore some stuff and you just got hit with a wave of emotion, and so
that's what it was. So I was kind of digging through, and I was thinking I go perspective. So I try to look at things through somebody else's lens and see what their experience was like. And I started picturing people through my memory of things that maybe people got left halfway through something, maybe got their feelings hurt, maybe some of them were I barely even considered that I did anything wrong, but because they showed up in that thing, it forced me to take a second look at it and find out that I didn't do something wrong. And a couple of them I feel like I still need to go say, hey, I love you, or something like that, just to take it off of the radar,
Yeah, sometimes you're doing it, I would say 90% of the time you're doing it for you,
right,
more than you're doing it for even them. I think of 2 or 3 times in my life where I thought certain way about certain person, never said anything to anybody, whatever, but it was like this weight because I was like, in my heart, I had an issue with them. Nobody else knew but me. And I called them up and said, listen, I just got to get this off my chest. I've been thinking this way. And I know you're not that way. And I just want to apologize. And they were like, really? Like it was super awkward a little bit.
Right.
And I was like, I just want to keep my heart pure. And this is weighing on me, and so I just need to say it out loud to you and release it. And they were like, "Sure, no problem." Like it was not a big deal for them. I hadn't necessarily done anything out loud to harm them, but I knew I was harboring this kind of attitude or emotion towards them. And it's amazing what happens when you make that call or you have that moment where you release it out over the ocean or whatever it might be.
Weight lifted, right?
Exactly.
Now one of the ones that were surprising is that there was a lot of guilt, and you know me well enough that I don't do guilt and I don't do regret.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came into that was there were some people that I had opportunities to be able to help at certain points, and I either didn't act fast enough or I passed on it, or I was hoping that somebody else would jump in there and do that.
Yeah.
And I got hit with them more than anything. That I'm digging through my Facebook to find out if I still have contact with some of these people to see they still need some help. I mean, it's forced me to get all emotional about this and the depth of it. See, I know now, like when people deal with like depressions and that kind of stuff, that you get hit in those waves and it seems like it's never ending. Like those bad feelings just keep punching you. And that's the way I felt. Like if it wasn't me, if this was somebody who was in a bad spot, I mean, that would be a deal breaker, a game changer. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too. You mentioned you had the opportunity to do something and you didn't. I find those we'll call them sins of omission, where I just omitted to doing something. It wasn't that I did something bad necessarily.
Right.
The person came up and a homeless person asked for $5. I'm like, I don't have any cash, and you got cash in your pocket, but I'm like, I got stuff to do. I got to keep going. And nobody's necessarily going to call you a bad person for doing that. Sometimes you genuinely are on your way to do something you do have, but I often think about those opportunities. The Bible has this thing it says where you entertain angels unaware, that there are times where the kind of supernatural moments that come into your world and you're not even aware that they're going on. So you have these people come in that are looking for help, or even a friend or something like that, and you pass on it because, well, it just doesn't kind of fit. Maybe they need to learn their lesson or whatever. You justify it in whatever way is there, and then on the back end you kind of look at it and go, wow, maybe I should have done something.
Convenient exit rather than trying to figure out a way to get involved.
One of the pastors that I work with said this. He said, if you ever have a generous thought, act on it, because the devil's never been generous once. Generous thought would only come from God. And I was like, I like that.
Right.
And so one of the things that he said is anytime he has a thought like, oh, that person needs $20, or I should buy that person lunch, or whatever it is, he goes, I just act on it because I realize that, the devil's never going to give me a thought to help somebody out or whatever. So if I'm having that thought, it has to be divinely inspired. So maybe I should act on it. And sometimes that's tough because you're like, well, I had plans for that money. I mean, you talk finances in that way, or, I had plans for that time, but now I'm going to invest it and give it to somebody else. Do you find that those omissions were the tough one for you, or were you wrapped up in some things that maybe you did too?
Well, I've made peace with most of my, bad things or things that I did overtly. These subtle ones are the ones that snuck up on me. And I think those are the ones I really need to call attention to, because of those ones where I'm when I have time and it's convenient, I have spare whatever, then those are the easy ones. But when I'm like eyeball and say, I hope someone comes and helps, I'm hoping someone else helps that person. So I'm off the hook. Right. Wow. And I should not be looking for a way out.
Yeah. No, that's really good. So when you have these waves of emotions that come in and you're being retrospective and kind of making amends to yourself, what does that look like? I mean, do you talk some things out loud? Do you make lists? Do you just act on it and pick up the phone and call somebody? Like, what did that kind of process look for you? Because I'm sure people feel those emotions, and then most people are like, don't come back up. Just stay down there. I'm going to keep trugging along doing what I got to do, but I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to feel that. But you're saying, hey, I felt it. I thought it all the way through. I feel like there's some things maybe I need to do. Did you make a list? Like, what was kind of your process in that?
So it came to me sort of like a theatrical dream, like a very lucid version of a dream. And so I let the thing play out, and when it would fade, I would try to get back into it to see the whole thing. I want to know start, and I want all this stuff to kind of be answered for me by the time I'm done dealing with it on that side. And then when I came back, I'm like 0 for 100, right? I've not been able to make anything up. I haven't gathered the details to get me closer to what I'm supposed to do. So that's what was so awkward and confusing about it, was it was revealed to me that I'm supposed to do something, but no connections have been made on what I'm freaking supposed to do. Because a lot of the stuff were ancient. Like, I don't even know where the people are anymore. And like, there was one instance where, we were traveling, and this was when Deb and I were, young in our relationship. And there was somebody that was changing a tire on the side of the road, and I saw it happen, and and that's it. I just noticed it, but what the heck are you supposed to do with that? I don't even know who that person was.
Right. Well, maybe some of it is just releasing yourself from the responsibility of it. Recognizing, hey, I'm not going to let the next opportunity pass me by, because some things we can't fix. Some things just are what they are. We made the choice or didn't make the choice, or decided on a path. And so, because I find in that guilt / amends process, yes, there are times where you need to go to other people. There's times where you need to make that phone call. There's times where you need to do those things. But for most people, the amend process for them is just actually forgiving themselves and changing course. There's this word repentance, and it literally means to change your mind. I can't change the past, but I can change the way that I think and the way that I act the next time.
So now I am, excuse me. Yeah. I'm looking for opportunities. Like when I see that thing that made me feel so terrible, and I was reminded now that I should have felt terrible in that deal, how's my next move is going to be? It's going to be different than the last time. So I think I'm going to be given the same dose, same scenario, same inconvenience, and see if I'm better this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's 100% true. I find for myself, the way that, especially in the line of work that I do, we come across a ton of people. Like I was mentioned to you before the show, we've had some walk-ins come in looking for a handout or help from the church, and we do our best to keep some Giant Eagle gift cards on hand to be able to help those folks that didn't necessarily come to the church, but we don't want to be like, happy holidays, let me pray for you. But and we realize that some of them are coming into bamboozle us, if you will. They've used up their food stamps, and they've used up certain things, and they're just looking for an extra thing, and some of them genuinely need the help. And we don't have time to necessarily investigate each one and stuff like that. So we keep these small little, $25 Giant Eagle gift cards to just say, hey, I don't need all the, the details and stuff. We'll pray for it if you want, but, just go get some milk, bread, eggs, whatever it is that you need, kind of deal. And I'll tell you, it's one of the hardest things to say no in those, because it's something you get constantly, especially around this time of the year at a church. We get a lot of those cases, and everybody has a story and everybody has a reason, and you only have so much resource to go around. And so at some level you're like, well, I have to be a good steward with this. I want to give it to people that need it, but in the same breath, I want to just give it to everybody and help everybody out. And so you do live in, and it's not necessarily guilt's probably the wrong word for it, but in that tension of I feel bad, but I don't know if I can or I should give this to this person, because that person's going to come in tomorrow, and if I give it to them, they don't really need it, and this person really needs it. And so having that discernment to kind of pick. You
just got to meet someone who will create infinite resources, and you don't have to worry about that.
Correct. Yeah, that is true. And
it's easy. See, you got your card. Get out of jail card.
Yes. Well, it's every church I've been a part of has wrestled with that. We actually to plug a local business. I don't know if you ever shopped at Sheely's Furniture.
Yeah.
But they actually give the church $1,000 a year towards our benevolence. So we're able to do things like that. It's something they don't publicize or anything like that. They've been doing it since before I got here. I don't know who knew who at some point, but they do some charity in that way. And I'm sure they do it to other churches as well. But it's a huge blessing for us, because then we get that and we're able to, we've helped church members out with bills and stuff. They've had their electric turned off, they've had hard times or whatever. We've also had folks that, have just needed, hey, I lost my job or whatever it might be, and just need a space for whatever. We've been able to help people with car repairs. And those are some of the most fun things. It's kind of like quasi being Santa Claus a little bit. Like some of the most fun stuff that you get to come alongside, particularly when I'm in relationship with somebody, because not that it's like it's just nice it's a warm thing to, I don't know, I've never felt bad doing it. Like, it just feels great.
Right.
And the way we kind of navigate that at the church, Pastor Joanne handles most of that. And what's great is she's connected to, so she works for Department of Family Services right here downtown. And so we're able to, some of those folks are just coming in because I lost my job, I don't know what to do, I don't have money to pay my electric bill, whatever it is. And she's able to say to them, well, listen, there are actually some resources here. We'll take care of this, but we can't pay your bills for the next 3 months, but we can get you connected to the resources that can. And so she's able to plug some of those people into programs that need food stamps or need to get over a hump or whatever it is. And we're able to partner and get them in where they need to get in, which is, I don't know, just one of those things. I'm like, it just feels good to connect people to the things that they need.
Heck yeah. Now I got to know, I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we don't script this show at all.
No.
We don't even know what the topic's going to be. And I felt like that this show was supposed to be about what it ended up being about. But what did you really have in mind to talk about today?
Absolutely nothing.
Really?
Yeah, I was so busy. This is my first day back in the office after 16 days out. And so I had back-to-back meetings. I had a staff meeting, got a chance to catch up with the Pastor Mike and Aaron, who both preached while I was gone, and just kind of hear how stuff went. Is there anything I need to know? Made several phone calls. We have a couple people in quarantine, so I was checking on some of that stuff, seeing how people were doing. And honestly, I got to like 4:15, 4:30. I ran home. And Sam was putting food down, and somebody stopped by the house to drop something off. Got to talking to them. The next thing I knew, I was like, I got to grab my shoes and go. Sam's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no idea. We're getting in the car to go. And then when you were like, atonement, I'm like, I could talk about that. Let's go.
Divine intervention.
Totally. You were ready with the topic today. You've been sitting on that. So does Debbie process kind of the same way that you do, or does she go through amends and stuff like that?
She's so deep. So I think I'm a little bit more superficial on how I pluck emotions out of in my environment, and I'm really quick to draw off of things and come to quick conclusions. She's more like just simmer in the moment and come to longer term conclusions. I think she's depth in all areas compared to me.
Yeah, you're just like, that's the issue. Let's execute on it. Let's finish it.
Slay it. Go home.
Yeah, they say what is it? Men are like waffles and women are like spaghetti. Men can compartmentalize, and they can have the whole waffle, but they can put a little syrup here and a little bit of stuff there. Where for a lady, everything is attached to everything. So if you pull on this end of the piece of spaghetti, it's also attached to the car that's attached to the house, that's attached to, know, and it's an interesting. I think it's in a book, but an interesting way to look at it, because they process things a little differently, and not every woman is that way, and not every guy is that way, but in generalities, most of the time that's true. I know for me, when those things come in, I don't like those emotions. I'm genuinely I don't know, I have 1 or 2 bad days a year, and most of the time I'm pretty upbeat, I try and keep motivation, inspired, all that stuff. But when you have those waves come in, I'm like, I have to deal with that because I don't want to feel that way tomorrow when I wake up. Yeah. So I'm like, who do I have to call? What do I have to do? You need to check. Okay, let's do this. Like, I want to rid myself of those things. And what I've found is as I've gotten older is sometimes I think God wants me to feel those things a little bit more than I like to feel them, because there's depth and stuff that he wants to do in me and in my character. And I'm just like, get it away from me. It's icky.
Well, you know what I found? Like, I kind of talked about how often I was hit with these things that was. When I think about the version of me like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to hang through all of that bad stuff. I feel like not only did I deal with it this time, like I wallowed in a little while to take it all in, and that would have like destroyed me. It proved strength. It really did. It proved that I've built up some, muscle in my spiritual muscle a little bit more from where I used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I think wisdom enters into it too. When you're being, feeling pity, or when you're riding that wave just because of the emotion, when it's actually something you need to deal with. With my kids, I'm sure you've experienced this with Ryan a little bit. There have been times where I haven't acted as the best dad, where it's just been a long day or whatever, and you bark at somebody or whatever it is, and they didn't deserve to be treated that way. And I try and catch myself as quick as I can, pull them in, and go, look, Daddy makes mistakes too, and I just want to apologize, immediately, because let me just make amends for this, because otherwise I'm gonna feel like crap about this. I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight, and I'm gonna be thinking about it till tomorrow morning. And so those sort of things, especially when it comes to relationships, as soon as I feel that, I want to make the amends. Do you find that with you and Debbie, or you and Ryan, that you immediately are just, hey, I'm gonna make amends for that? Because
she taught me that from day one. She basically said that not even going to bed with ill feelings. I mean, get it over the way, because you don't know if someone's going to wake up the next morning. You don't want to live with that
promise
crap.
Tomorrow.
So if it's going to destroy us, let's have it out right now and get it out of the way.
Yeah.
And that her fearlessness in that way. See, I was a fearful guy, right? Mm-hmm. So that if it was scary, I wanted to put it off to tomorrow. Maybe it would go away on its own. It never does. No. That's the spoiler.
No. No, you wake up tomorrow and it's like, oh, it's still here.
It gets bigger, a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Well, and that's the issue with so many people that with the escapisms of drugs and alcohol and whatever else that people run to, and then they wake up and realize, oh, that stuff didn't help me escape anything. I still have to look at myself in the mirror like I'm still here, and I can't run away from me.
Yeah,
and so you got to deal with that.
And when I guess there's some part of that psychosis is that when you start feeling bad about something you did then went the wrong direction, you almost feel like everybody else is making good choices and you're the only dipshit that's making bad choises. So true. And then so you got another level of guilt on top of what you did.
Yeah. And I find that for me, the Bible says that the devil is the accuser of the brethren. That I often tell people, he doesn't have any power except what you give him. And so when the accusations come and you feel like an idiot and you feel frustrated with yourself, you feel like you're the only one, I often think those are the words of the enemy of my soul, not the champion of my soul. And so when that person's speaking those things, and yes, a lot of times it sounds like your own voice, but at the end of the day, I have to remind myself, if I'm just beating myself up, I'm doing the devil's work for him, and there's no need to do that. Nope. So it takes just as much energy to go in the other direction and build myself up. And so I need to build myself up.
What's really helpful too is to have supportive people around you that's not going to aid in the abuse, because especially people like us, we're a bad enemy of ourselves. Yeah. But if you have the whole world chiming in and say you do deserve this and pay your consequences and do your thing, that would be really rough.
Yeah. And I think with kids, I know I try with my kids to be not the accuser, but to be the builder. And I think a lot of parents think it's their job. Well, I got to put them in their place. I got to discipline them. I got to show them that this is wrong. And discipline has a place, but discipline's always redemptive and constructive. It's never punitive. And when parents don't get that, you'll end up destroying a kid rather than building them up. Everything that we do for Charlotte, Graham, Ben, and Abe, I want it to be constructive, and I want it to be building them up. You may have to spank their behind. You may have to take something away, but the goal isn't to inflict punishment. The goal is, I need you to grow in this. I need you to learn something from this. And so if we're just taking something away because, just shut up and sit down, I'm taking it, that's not constructive. You're insecure because other parents are looking at you, or you know what I mean, when parents respond that way. But I want to think through those things, and not that those things don't happen in my house, but I'm trying to be in such a way when I'm having conversations, or when I don't need to be an accuser. They're going to accuse themselves plenty. But man, if I can come alongside and encourage and build and use things and put things in their path that may not be comfortable, but are going to actually be constructive for their character, constructive for them to learn a little perseverance. How do I come alongside in those things and help build them in such a way that they can stand on my shoulders and not under my feet?
I feel like you and I are going to do a lot of like helping people come back on that redemptive trail? I mean, you've already started seeing that deal.
Yeah.
And I do feel like, you know, I had to go through the hypocrite moments that if I'm going to help other people with their redemptions, that I got to make sure that I'm square first kind of a thing.
Yeah. I know that feeling well. I know that feeling well. I mean, you get up, for me, I speak every week. And so you get up to share something that you don't have totally down, but they're like, man, that's the text that I feel like God gave me. And that's the points I'm supposed to make. And that second point, I might as well turn around and preach to myself.
Right.
Because, you know, you're never going to have everything down. And that's one of the great lies that most people are like, well, when I get better, I'll go to church, or when I clean this up, then I can help other people. And it's like, no, actually how you get better is by helping other people. How you get better is, well, you're in the middle of your dirt, you grab somebody that's there with you and say, hey, let's do this together. And that's one of those lies that enters in is, well, I have to be perfect first before I can help anybody else. I haven't met a perfect person yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so, you know, the best bet is, hey, I'm going to get in here. I'm not going to be perfect. I say to our church all the time, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. And just because I have a microphone and happen to be standing in the front doesn't mean that I don't have to work through some of this stuff and I don't have to figure some of this stuff out.
But that message, just like when your kid sees that you're a little bit fallible, but you're honest about your failings, makes it easier for the guy who thinks he's the only dipshit in the crowd that says, hey, look, Doug's a dipshit too sometimes. And it makes it easier.
It makes me approachable too.
Yeah.
And I find it to be very pragmatic. Most people, I remember saying early on, you know, Sam and I were 28 and 26 when we started at the church. And so many people were like, I don't know if I can come talk to the pastor. I'm like, why? I don't understand. And I would say ad nauseum, from the platform to the staff, like, my office is always open. Like, I seriously think I'm one of the most approachable people. Just try me. Like, if you hate something that I said or did, like, come talk to me. And people wouldn't for the longest. They had this like aura, like, pastor is whatever. And I was like, and so that's probably why I say it so much from the platform. And I remind people all the time, like, it's not because I don't think you, like, there's a place for honor in certain things, and there's a place for that stuff. But at the end of the day, like, I want to be able to help people and to help them understand that I'm not here and you're down here. Like we're both. I'm just, you know, one beggar telling another beggar where to find the bread. Like, I found the bread. It's this way. Come with me. You know, the good bread's over here. You can eat that bread if you want to keep eating that bread. But I'm telling you, I've tasted this one. It's good. That's essentially the difference.
Yeah.
And most people think like, oh, you know, he has it all figured out. And I'm like, Sam and I are figuring this thing out as a married couple. We're figuring it out with our kids. And, but you get a little bit elevated, put on that pedestal. And if you're not careful, when you get into that spot and you start believing your own press and stuff like that, you think, oh, you know, actually I am that good, Joe. I don't know if you know this, but I'm pretty awesome. And you start arriving at that spot in your own head, and it really, really messes with, kind of where you can go with certain things.
Yeah. Cause then you're limited because now you've got to keep that image that doesn't really exist out there, and then you're so limited.
Yeah. And then you trade in the mask. Well, I'm with church people and they all think I'm perfect, so I have to put this mask on. Yeah. But now I'm, you know, with these people, and Jim Gaffigan does a whole thing on, he's like, have you ever had two different groups of friends that run into each other? And, you know, he quick say to your one set of friends, like, listen, this is my church friends that are coming up here. And he's like, just don't mind my British accent. And, you know, he goes, and he's real funny with it. But he's like, you know, sometimes we create these auras with different people, and in life, that's just exhausting. You know, I'm going to be the same person rolling around on the floor, wrestling my kids, sitting here on podcasts, standing up on the platform at church. It's just easier.
Yeah. So I guess the overall thing is that atonement should not be a punitive deal.
Yeah.
It is a discovery more than anything else, learning yourself. And so the people that are listening, and, you know, that you're not alone. Every single one of us, you know, we walk a path where we have some casualties along the way, make some bad choices. And some of them we get to temporarily escape on. And those are going to be the bad ones, because you're going to revisit you sometime in the future, and you got to be prepared with a really different version of it when it's on its terms. So I guess this is our blessing, is that we get to go through those things on our terms and deal with them the best way that we can.
Well, and for most people, you have opportunities to make amends. Most people do. Most people choose not to, because it's not comfortable. It's not fun. It's not necessarily easy, because you got to look first and foremost at yourself in the mirror and realize this is it, you know, and I'm not perfect, and I do have some things I don't like about myself, but that's okay. And to wrap your mind around that, and then be able to go back to those people, those places, those things, and make amends can be really special. And then, but it's not just about fixing the past, because you don't always get to do that, but it's about, hey, the next time we're gonna do it right and do it better.
And I guess it's also, make it easier that people who want to make amends with you, make it an easier transaction.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the mental anguish that you go leading into that about what you're going to do and what you're going to say is all the punishment you ever needed.
You have that conversation in front of the mirror about 37 times. Right. And then you get in there, and usually it's not as bad. Occasionally there's the person that wants you to crawl across fire and coals, and
those are the worst.
Yeah, and doesn't want to forgive you and anything else. But, if you go in there resolved that, hey, I'm going to say what I need to say, I'm not responsible for how they respond. I'm responsible to make the amends, to offer the olive branch. If they break it, step on it and throw it back in my face, that's not on me. I'm not here for them per se. I'm here for me, and I'm going to do what I need to do so that I can be square, so that I can be right.
Now, when you had to apologize, having like somebody near you that was an ally while you did the apology, did it make it easier for you?
My parents were so good at this when we were kids. I remember in probably 7th grade, I got into like a music thing where I listened to music with lots of bad language in it. Got like Green Day Dookie to throw you back there.
You're so sheltered.
1993 there, some Nirvana and different stuff like that. And I started to like write my own songs, and I was writing words that I had no idea what they meant, but they were in these songs. And so I would write my own. Well, my mom found my book of songs, and my parents made it honestly so easy when it came to the big things. And I remember her opening the book and coming in my room and saying, "So I found this while I was cleaning your room, can you explain it to me?" She wasn't like mad. She didn't throw it at me like, "What is this crap?" And we sat and we talked about it. She goes, "Can you tell me what that word means?" And she was being very, investigative and everything else. And she goes, "I don't think you know what all these words mean." And we had a really great conversation. Like I said, I was maybe 8, 7. And I remember having this conversation in the end of my bed. And she goes, "I don't think that's the type of person that you want to become. And so we're going to just put this behind us." And we went downstairs to the fireplace, and we sat there and we burned each one, and we talked about them as we went through. And I'll never forget that moment. I never wrote another thing like that again, per se. But it was a moment where I realized, like, okay, I said some things I shouldn't have said in those things. I wrote some things down. I'm supposed to be better than this. And she didn't beat me up. She didn't ground me. She didn't freak out. We had a great conversation. She taught me, hey, this is how you redeem this moment. This is how you make amends. She didn't say that to me, but now I know that's what was happening. Same thing my freshman year of high school. The only time that 4 or 5 of my friends all decided that we're in high school now, we should have beer.
Of course.
Right?
Do it, man.
And I remember we bought some skunked Coors Light from some upperclassmen, and we went into a cemetery and had a horrible night and threw up, and it was terrible. And but my parents had created such a space for me. So I was, what's a freshman, like 13, 14, 15 maybe?
Right.
I came home and the next morning and just felt awful. And I came in and I said, "Mom, I have to tell you something." I said, "What?" I said, "You can't freak out and you can't call the other parents." She goes, "Okay." And I was like, "This is what we did last night." I said, "It was a horrible experience. I feel bad that I broke your trust." And we had this whole conversation. I know that sounds totally weird and foreign because nobody else had a childhood like that, but I'm telling you, like,
in my head, I'm telling my story and it's worse, way worse.
And we sat, I had this conversation. We talked for 20 minutes. She prayed with me. She said, that was, I hope you never have to feel like that again. And I never did.
Wow.
I can't make it up, but she walked me through that, and I had a conversation with my dad about it later. Now he gave me a little bit more of a hard time about it, but in like a more of a fun older brother kind of way than like, and he was like, "You're an idiot," whatever. But Mom was teaching me that process of atonement and redemption, and just because you made a mistake doesn't mean failure doesn't have to be final. And all right, we appreciate the confession. We're not going to rake you over the coals for it, but let's pray. Let's put this behind us. Let's have a moment here. And we did.
Do you think you'd be allowed to hang out with me as kids?
Probably not.
No, I'd be that guy, right? They were telling you stories about avoiding.
My parents were always, thinking about, my mom would often, she wouldn't use this adage, I don't think, but Mom and Dad, who was always important. they weren't always concerned what I was doing. It was who I was with, because they knew that who often determines what. And so I tell this when I preach on this, but you know, if I came home smelling like smoke, my parents didn't have to ask me what I was doing. It's very obvious what I was doing. They want to know, who were you with? Because next time that who's going to be different. And who is such a big trajectory thing, whether, you know, to have somebody in support when you have to make amends and do something that you don't really want to do, or when you're making stupid decisions. We can all sit and tell those stories. Well, I was with this person. I was with them a lot when I did stupid things, because those who things are important. For sure. How do you, I mean, since we went down this path for a few minutes, how do you monitor that? Because Ryan and Shar are about the same age, and, you know, they make friends, and some of their friends' parents don't have the same values that you guys do and stuff like that. So I'm sure that you hear things come out of Ryan's mouth and you're like, where did you learn that? And you have those moments. How do you monitor that without being like, you can't talk to anybody except who we approve? This is the approved friends list. Like, that's all you get. How do you navigate that?
Well, I got lucky, and my kid is the authority. He is the mature one in our family. So when he runs into it, he goes and tells on the friend. Like, I don't have to do anything.
Nice.
Like, and I just have to get the nod and say, "Yep, good decisions," and then move on. You know, thank God, because I mean, if you know, I think that. You know, when kids run into different circumstances and they notice that it's different, I think the lesson's already baked into that. As long as they don't follow that and want to emulate the worst, that's the real danger. I don't know how I would handle that. Thank God he's the way that he is.
Yeah, because it's such a, you know, you talk about bad company corrupts good character. You know, you spend all this time working with your kids to make them the best they can be, and then sometimes they go and they choose people to be around and choose things that you would never choose, and some are completely destructive and unhealthy and terrible for them. And as a parent, they get to a certain point and you just, nothing I can do. You know, you start thinking, well,
there's a limit. Like, there would be education value, like a shock value in it, and then it would get to destructive, and I probably would be put the hammer down pretty hard when it got to the destructive part.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we could go on and on, but it's good to be back. It's almost 7 o'clock. It's beautiful. Snow's coming down out here in Youngstown, and I'm going to go home and go to bed because I've worked all day today, and I haven't done that in 16 days. So my brain is starting to run out of juice, and soon I'm going to in this conversation.
But it was good talk. That was awesome.
But it was real good, and I'm happy you had that moment, and I'm happy that I have the antibodies and the Rona is done, and looking forward to being back with you guys on Thursday.
All right, cool.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos and the word about us.